Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of this review of the 250 bird challenge and our birding big year of 2023. In part 1 of this video we covered a few different topics, as well as showing the highlights of some of the birds we saw from January through to part way through May. We're going to continue with that in a second, back after this. Welcome back. Let's just get straight on with it, shall we? At the end of part 1 we were in California. Let's return there now. We were just getting into the mountains and getting close to a place I really liked called Idlewild. Arriving at a small equestrian park, McCall Memorial Park, we immediately spotted a western bluebird. And shortly after that, an acorn woodpecker. We moved on to Idlewild Nature Centre and saw our first Steller's jay. And one of 2 chickadee species we were really hoping for. This one is a mountain chickadee. Another bird we wanted to see but didn't have very high hopes for was the roadrunner, but we got lucky. One was drinking from some standing water near our hotel. Thirsty fellow? As we began to leave the mountains, we moved on further into desert habitat. At Big Morongo Canyon Preserve, thanks in part to the presence of bird feeders, fruit and nectar, we saw some brightly plumaged birds like this hooded oriole, and a summer tanager. We'd actually already seen a few Anna's hummingbirds by now, but here's the first footage of a male showing the iridescent feathers on the throat. Later that day, I slammed the car brakes on and pretty much lost my mind when I saw a burrowing owl. It's a bird I'd always wanted to see. Wow, that's like the perfect lifer. We saw our first quail, a Gambel's quail. And as we continued south away from the desert, the environment became a bit more lush and there were more marshes and sloughs. We'd seen a juvenile yellow-crowned night heron in Toronto before, pretty much at the edge of its normal range, so we were pleased to see this adult. Sadly, it was around this point that we were having to turn back north towards San Francisco and the end of our trip to California, but we did see a few species on the way back up. And while we were a little bit worried that we were missing the warblers back in Toronto, we did see a few in California, like this Wilson's warbler and this orange-crowned warbler. Another cool heron species we saw was the little blue heron. We didn't see too many shorebirds on this trip, maybe 5 or 6 species, but we saw a distant long-billed curlew and decided to take a fairly long walk to get a closer look. Oh, look at the beak on that. Just north of San Francisco, we got to see some immense redwood trees, absolutely massive, and among them there were lots of Pacific wrens, which was the last bird we saw in California. What an amazing trip it was. We'd love to go back sometime. We saw 90 first of the year birds in California, including a few that we might otherwise have seen in the east, but also many new lifers. I've barely scratched the surface of California in this review video. There's a playlist on my channel page if you want to see the rest of the birds we saw while on this trip. Okay, so back in Toronto then, and it's still May, we made an attempt to try to see if we could bag any last-minute passing warblers. And we did get a few: Nashville, Tennessee, American redstart, bay-breasted and this blackpoll warbler. And that took us up to the end of May. And we had a total of 99 birds for the month. Altogether then, a very healthy 220 species out of our 250 that we needed for the year, so what could possibly go wrong? In part 1 of this video, I said I'd talk about the things that maybe didn't go quite so well. That would include our summer. We kind of lost our mojo a little bit. We didn't get out that much. We didn't see too many birds. It may not have been obvious to the viewer because I was fervently editing video footage from California and kind of releasing those videos, but let's take a look back at June, July and August. I have a hint for you. August was our worst month. Well, June kicked off quite nicely with a trip to Point Pelee National Park and the surrounding area, where we had hopes of picking up some more warblers and some summer species too. Our main target was the Prothnotary warbler. They breed here, and we duly added it to our list of birds. Yay, Prothnotary! The tip-at-point peely often throws up some interesting species, and on this occasion we saw some ruddy turnstones, the small birds in the foreground of this shot. It's a lifer for us. Another bird that does well and breeds at peely is the otherwise vulnerable species, the black tern. Taking a trip to the nearby Hillman Marsh, we saw a somewhat distant black-bellied plover. And well, that was mostly it for June. We saw 9 new species. In July we had to travel through Pennsylvania, and we briefly stopped at this causeway when we noticed some birders hanging out and some nearby shorebirds. Out on the water we witnessed some least sandpipers and lesser yellowlegs. And a single Hudsonian godwit, which is fairly notable this far inland. The only other bird we saw in July was an indigo bunting. We literally only added 4 new birds in July. What about August? Well, we actually didn't see any new birds at all in August. Suddenly, the excellent start we'd gained by the end of May wasn't looking so good. Alright, I'll stop with the bad news soon, honestly. I have to admit something to you though. As much as we love birds, we like seeing our old favourites, we like exploring, we like the chase of trying to find something rare, there's a real kick in that. We're not that great at identifying some gulf species, we're not that great at identifying shorebirds, and to be honest, some of the hawk species too. It might help if we had a scope, but we don't. So if we'd have seen a few more of those types of species by this point in the year, we'd be doing a lot better at this point and maybe a little bit kind of less anxious. But things do start to get better. Let's take a look at September. When we hit September, we decided to really refocus our efforts and get to places that would help us hit our 250 bird goal, even if it bankrupted us, starting with the first weekend of the month, a long weekend off work to travel back to southwestern Ontario to the London and Sarnia areas. We managed to pick up a few more warblers, including this black and white. We also got a magnolia, and we were quite excited to see a Canada warbler. It's Canada. Holy. By the way, we saw so many green herons. Awesome. Sarnia, share some of your herons with us. Moving on to the next weekend and busting our budget on hotels, we stayed near Algonquin Park with the aim of hopefully grabbing any Algonquin specials, like a black-backed woodpecker and ruffed grouse. Well, we got the black-backed woodpecker with some perseverance and a slightly unexpected merlin. Between the Sarnia weekend and this Algonquin weekend, we finally picked up a few of the vireo species we'd so far been unable to get on camera, like this blue-headed. No ruffed grouse though, yet. But the following weekend, we were away once more, this time on a camping trip to Grundy Lake Provincial Park, where we did finally stumble across a ruffed grouse. The following weekend spilled across into October, so you know what, I'll talk about it in the next section. With our newfound focus on trying to complete the challenge, we managed to pick up 12 new species in September. Before I move on to October, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that has supported me, my wife, and this channel in general. Every single thumbs up like that you've given us on YouTube, all the comments that we've appreciated and enjoyed engaging with, and I appreciate every single subscription too. Everyone that has joined from the beginning over the last few months, much appreciated. But not just on YouTube, out in the field too. We've bumped into people several times, they've either been subscribers or they just recognise us from the channel. Everyone's always had nice things to say to us, and we've really enjoyed talking about birds and birding with you when we bump into you, so don't be shy about saying hello if you do see us. Now, October. We knew it would be a little bit more challenging. We had a trip booked to England for 2 weeks, and remember, we're only counting North American birds, so any of those blighty birds, they don't count towards our 250 goal. I also moaned earlier in part 1 of this video about missing the warblers as they migrated north. We were in California. Now they'll be on their way back south and would be in England, so we were kind of afraid we might miss them both times. However, we did step out a few times in October to see if we could catch any of those warblers and any other new birds, so let's take a look back at October now. At the end of September into October, we visited Presqu'île Provincial Park on our way to camping near Prince Edward Point. The highlight of Presqu'île was perhaps this Baird's sandpiper. In Prince Edward County we saw black-throated blue and green warblers. This one is the green. And although we'd seen these plenty of times already this year, it's worth pointing out that we saw absolutely tons of ruby and golden crown kinglets. This one is a golden crowned. They were just kind of passing through during a peak period of their migration. Thanks to a tip from another birder, we also saw a greater yellowlegs and this solitary sandpiper. The best part of the weekend was being able to observe the banding of a saw-whet owl, albeit during the night, so the footage is a little bit grainy. By this point, we had now seen a total of 249 out of 250 species. We only needed one more bird, but it was time for us to take a trip to England, and we wouldn't be counting any of the birds there, so that means no more birds until November. Only one more bird to go. We're going to have to try to drag this video out somehow. Can we cut to commercials? Only joking, I'm still here. We didn't drag out the one more bird thing on purpose, it just kind of happened that way right before I went to England and then couldn't release any new videos for a couple of 3 weeks. Didn't do it on purpose, but hey, it added to the drama, right? There's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's whether there was any birds we didn't see but we would have liked to have seen that would have gone towards our 250 bird goal. There sure were. We didn't see a couple of warblers. I moaned about how we missed them migrating north and then the peak of them migrating south again. We never saw a Blackburnian warbler. We also never saw a Cape May warbler, both fairly easy birds. Despite seeing dozens of those last year, we didn't see them at all this year. Any other gaps? Didn't see a few owl species, didn't see any bitterns, didn't see a rail, didn't see any of the water thrush species. A few gaps in our sparrows too, a couple of obvious ones. Clay-coloured sparrow, we never saw a Lincoln sparrow, so there are definitely birds that perhaps we should have seen. Maybe next year? Stay tuned for the 2024 challenge announcement, that's coming in a week or so. Were there any birds that we did see that we didn't tell you about? If you remember back in part 1, I said we changed the rules after the first day. We had to film the bird for it to count. So with the birds that we saw and didn't film, therefore didn't count and also didn't tell you about, yep, 3 birds. 2 of them in California. Yellow-headed blackbird, we saw that, but it was in a bush amongst so many other birds. I was trying to film as much as I could. The yellow-headed blackbird got away, so we didn't count it. Another California bird, a really cool one, yellow-billed magpie. Unfortunately, it flew over the car while I was driving on a highway, couldn't get camera on it, it doesn't count. We didn't mention it, but we saw it. There's one more bird that we saw, didn't film, and didn't tell you about, and it's a bird that I complained about a few times through the year about being a nemesis and wanting to see it and hearing reports about it. You know what it is? Snow bunting. We saw it right at the beginning of the year. Actually, a whole flock of them took off from a farmer's field. We were 99% sure it was snow buntings, but I didn't get the camera on it. Another time, quite recently, in Algonquin Park, on the side of the road, sometimes I like to kind of drink the melting snow, perhaps chew on the salt, or perhaps eat some of the pebbles to help with digestion. We saw snow buntings on the side of the road. I was driving, I couldn't film them. It doesn't count. That's it. Let's just relive the moment more positively where we saw that 250th bird. We are now at the visitors centre. We're going to take a look to see if there's anything out the back there, perhaps in the car park. They don't have the feeders up yet, otherwise that would be a dead cert for that pine grosbeak that we're searching for. But let's see if there's any of these winter finches hanging around the visitor centre. So, some finches have just landed. I'm trying to position the camera. Some finches have just landed on the top of this tree. We have a red crossbill. We have red crossbilled, male and female. That's a lifer for us. It's the bird Sarah wanted to see, and it's bird 250. So we did it. Hooray! But we'll probably just carry on. But we have our 250th bird, so mission accomplished. And that's it, that's our 250th bird. It's also the end of this review of the 250 bird challenge. I hope you've all enjoyed following us along through the year. I hope you enjoyed this review video. If you didn't watch from the beginning, perhaps go back and watch some of our videos. I hope you'll enjoy following the adventure. Speaking of adventures, Sara and I have decided on a challenge for 2024. But you're going to have to stay tuned to the channel. We'll be back soon and we'll talk through some of the details and what our goal is for 2024. Once more, thank you so much to everyone who watches these videos and for your support. I much appreciate when you hit that like button, really like your comments too. And if you could hit the subscribe button, if you're not already a subscriber, that would really help us out as we go into 2024. Tell your friends, much appreciated. Thank you everyone. Happy birding, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday period. Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching.